Hello, I'm Dr. Bond. We have another Bond report here. This one is the School of Roundsmanship. And as you can see from the title slide, we're moving roundsmanship from a craft to a science. We're trying to develop, there's a great deal of roundsmanship that's naturally out there in the world, but we'd like to make it a more systematic study and with more terminology and turn it into more of a science, if you will, but something in which you can receive formal instruction. Roundsmanship is hard to succinctly define, but it's basically the art of getting away with it when you don't know very much. And this is teachable in many ways, and we've founded an institute so we can impart some of these more gifted people. Roundsmanship is hard to define. It's very like obscenity from Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart. It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. And we're going to give some examples of that later on. This is basically the work of Stephen Potter, a genius of the late 40s, early 50s that coined the words gamesmanship, lifemanship, one-upmanship in a series of books. First hardback, you can only get them in paperback now. They're in Penguin, but these are some of the most brilliant books in English where he talks about lifemanship, one-upmanship. In fact, he coined the word. And so in medicine, as we train, we have residents, fellows, refractive branches of ophthalmology. You can apply this manship to anything. The true roundsman knows that honesty is the most important thing. A lot of people need some formal training to get over that. You're taught to be honest by your parents. Honesty is the most important thing. If you can learn to fake that, you got it made. That's a George Burns line, but it's a lot to do. And the Institute will teach that it's something, it's stage you go through like you need to get over. The true roundsman is enlightened. Women are born with it. They're apt and natural lifemen, and they grow quickly formidable with a minimum amount of instruction, a little instruction and guidance, and they're positively scary. So in the manner of English, we're using men here, but this is men and women, and the women are better naturals at it. So this is the formation of the Academy of Roundsmanship. We've selected some palatial digs here to form the basis for the study of our science. And the advancement of such a rich field, I thought it's irresponsible to leave this in the hands of a single genius, however gifted. And the author, me, keenly feels the inevitable encroachments of old age, so trained minds must be developed before my inevitable passing of the author. Perhaps my loss, however crushing, will not be entirely fatal to the discipline of roundsmanship. So much of the art is based on the ability to make up plausible sounding things quickly. This greatly improves with diligence and study. Role models, while it is true that very few will become masters, the author is convinced that most ophthalmologists are born roundsmen requiring only a little polish and a little instruction, determined for, if not altogether illustrious, colorful careers. And the state of the art can be much improved. For instance, we recommend various courses before getting into the more advanced work. Like most curricula, a rigorous grounding in theory before attempting your field work is very strongly advised. I myself, the author, has witnessed numerous examples of promising examples of young roundsmen relying on sheer native talent, prematurely coming to ruin as they run up against trained roundsmen with perhaps more circumscribed natural gifts, but the advantage of thorough indoctrination in the discipline. And typically what's done is to wait for your chance and pounce, sort of like goose hunting, duck hunting. Most of this stuff is certain styles are done from ambush almost. So a rigorous grounding in theory, excellent, if unpolished work. You will see some brilliant things done, but a more systematic treatment, a gathering of the more able minds and natural talent in the discipline. There are those who say that ours is a dour science, but its contemplation is a sweet mystery to those who spend their days contemplating it. We will define it through a few modest examples. As the painter Edgar Degas said, it's fairly simple, but as the painter Edgar Degas said, one of the Impressionists, he said, painting's very easy unless you know what you're doing. This is going to be a little more with this. So enter with us the enlightened world of cut and thrust, parry and counter move, beer and Skittles, sunshine and Santa Claus. The list of things what the Roundsman covers. First off, a great truth that underlies all roundsmanship: never allow yourself to be made a slave to the truth. Mark Twain said that never tell the truth to those who are not worthy of it. A good sentiment. A modest example is a young guy in an academic place in academic ophthalmology who's trying to inflate his experience when he says, now he's only done one case, but he says that's in my hands. If he's done 2 cases, he'll say, well, gee, in my series, or case after case has shown this. 3 cases is in my experience. These are the proper ways to speak of this with the right phraseology where you hint at things. There are inevitable difficulties in learning this or any other science or craft, and you can be disconcertingly stuck there. We say holding the bag, the British say holding the baby. You can be disconcertingly stuck with the mere truth. But it requires study, and the art is slippery and difficult. The great roundsman Hippocrates said early on, life is short, the art is long, experience fallacious, judgment difficult. He also said opportunities fleeting. It depends on the Greek translation you want. But an early and instinctive roundsman. Here we have a group of buzzards around a corpse, which they've pretty much polished off in that illustration. But I'm thinking of this, as you find roundsmen in their natural state, before tutoring and before some polish and some systematic education, you find some real ability out there. And to consider a group of contending glaucoma men, like a bunch of buzzards huddled around a corpse, and most of the time they spend not eyeing the corpse, but eyeing each other. Who's going to make the next move? And you have an unspoken agenda there, where mostly glaucoma guys, there's a great deal of money, for instance, in the pharmacological and the drugs used for glaucoma. And generally, each of the guys has got some kind of agenda that he's not really talking about. They're doing it outwardly over the merits of a particular case, but actually that guy's looking after the interests of his unspoken territory. So the first thing the roundsman learns is what are motivations. Never let yourself be made a slave to the truth. The non-roundsman, the non-trained roundsman, seeing a phenomenon thinks, what is this? Whereas the real question, the roundsman, is what is behind this? What is really going on with that? When President Jefferson couldn't get things going out of the Congress, he said, it puts one in mind, these guys are trained lawyers, and he said they are trained to dispute everything, concede nothing, and argue by the hour. And to expect a consensus among these men is to expect something that's never yet happened. They're trained to disagree, trained to nitpick, trained to do things, and it's moving to witness roundsmanship like this at its basic and primal. You can watch countless examples and see it done, but it can be done better and more advantageously with a little bit of systematic instruction. Now let us begin. I want to come into this by example. It's a complex field, so let's take one example of countering. Basically, a very childish tactic in a grand rounds type setting, which you'll have in med school, is the most basic defense, not the art, but the illusion of not being seen. The first thing a child will do when he wants to not get called on or do things is to think he's being inconspicuous, to just not be seen. When you're teaching a small kid to start rudimentary chess and play things like that, their first hope is they can make a move and you just won't notice it. You won't see it. That's very much a snare and a delusion. And bitter experience, and there is no other kind, will show that true safety is unfortunately to be found elsewhere as you get older and experienced beyond your desire and beyond your will. Maybe they just won't see me, the fond hope and wish of every small child, because it is childish and it'll sadly show its weakness. It's a fond hope, but it's never true, fond and vain. But that is a natural thing. Now, can you improve on that with a little instruction rather than doing this? Now, if you're a resident in Grand Rounds, as all doctors were, you're part of a sullen, silent herd. There may be some safety in numbers, but James Thurber said this, there's no safety in numbers or anything else. You have the consideration only that it increases the sheer number of targets in a given area, and maybe there's a little illusory safety to be found in the fact that you're somewhat relatively less likely to get hit. But a moment's reflection on the mechanics, let's say whether a storm of machine gun fire coming in your position is less deadly if you've got 30 guys standing there than one, that'll provide some sad and melancholy answers to your question. Once again, James Thurber, there's no safety in numbers or anything else, and you're never as inconspicuous as you think you are. Also, nature has a built-in irony that trying too hard to be inconspicuous is conspicuous in itself. And one is put in the mind of, say, a bride walking down the aisle wearing camouflage. Well, gee, I think nobody will see me. I can do that. That's Raymond Chandler was talking about this in Trouble Is My Business. And he said, in an area, he was talking about somebody else. He said he was trying to be inconspicuous, and he was about as inconspicuous as a tarantula on a slice of angel food cake. Some people never wise up. The Institute is going to be in the position to wise you up and do these things so you can not make the mistakes everybody else has already made. The more robust approach, where you meet things head on in some ways or try and run them, is far and away the safer one, disdaining the pusillanimous tactic of simply making yourself small and hoping not to be noticed. You go right at it. You redirect the enemy fire at the very least. Ideally, you send it back where it came from. And this is a little more sophisticated, and this is the approach that can be taught in an academy of roundsmanship. Get out ahead of it, send it back, deflect it, deter it. I'm perhaps overly repetitious trying to say that complete passivity as a defense is wrong-headed. There's a very real, you have to make a downside for the aggressor. There has to be a credible deterrent. Chesty Puller said this, you lock a Marine in a room with an anvil for 24 hours, he'll break it, lose it, or get it pregnant. But at least Chesty's saying he's doing something. He's taught to be aggressive. He's taught to get out there and make moves. And he's kind of illustrating a point there. So let us talk about what you'd teach. Grand Rounds Basic. The model is a burglar casing a row of houses. You have a guy who's going to ask you some questions in a Grand Rounds. Now, any burglar worth his salt, given sufficient time and determination, he can break into any particular house in this row of houses. And one is very much the same. In real life, however, he does not have unlimited time and determination. He has a limited amount of time and a limited tolerance for danger, and that tolerance for danger is real or perceived danger. He also believes that one house is much the same as another in the terms of the rewards that it offers, and it follows that anything at all, however slight, which throws him off his game, it throws him off his usual MO, it raises his already heightened suspicions, will make him kind of move to the next house, which is a crucial point. You don't have to kill him, you just have to bump him a little. You have to try to redirect this to go to somewhere else. There is some writing by retired former burglars about their craft. It's interesting reading. And once again, they regard one house as very like another. They're very easily put off by any hint of possible difficulty. They have a state of heightened awareness, and they'll kind of move on. One is much the same as another. We're casing the house. Let's see now. Is that a leash I see left out in the yard? Well, do they have a dog? Do these wires that I'm seeing maybe lead to an alarm? That window looks like it's got some sharp edges. I always check over the door and under the doormat, and there was no key there. So that makes that little thing I see just might be a camera. They're getting smaller every year, but there's more light around here than I thought. Well, what's the next one look like? The one after that. And the hell, there's plenty of unavoidable trouble in the world that can't be gotten around. And why have avoidable trouble? Now, that was your house, and you never even knew it. But that is what you want. The short point of the long story is these people want the same safety that you do. You just have to give them the idea this isn't quite safe. You're part of that sullen, silent herd. One's very like another, but be the least attractive target. And we're going to give some examples. There's an old movie, Groucho Marx and a society lady, I think Margaret Dumont. They're talking on the telephone. It's both sides of a divided screen. And the lady says to Groucho, why don't you come over here? You must come over here at once. There's terrible trouble. And Groucho wonders about this, and he thinks, well, why don't you come over here? There's no trouble over here. Exactly. That is actually kind of a profound point. There is a lot of human nature in people, said Mark Twain. And part of human nature is they don't like to go to so much trouble. I'll give another example. Designers of tanks understand the true safety in genuine combat is a combination of things: speed, maneuverability, elusiveness, maximum firepower, floating like a butterfly, stinging like a bee. You have to be able to hit, but also be hard to hit. It needs to be understood. But these have examples. Our next two examples are going to concern grand round defense and the inseparability of defense from offense. The idea that there's got to be a downside to making some kind of move. The aggressor have to perceive a downside in making a move on you. A direct hit by the enemy is far less common than glancing, and which is why all tank armor, for instance, is slanted. The aim is to try to divert, deflect. The shell's going somewhere, but now it's elsewhere. And the crew of your tank and your tank itself remains an intact fighting unit. Now, yeah, it's going somewhere, but it's not going on you. And you're trying to deflect, deter, dodge. And this is a modest example. The idea is to be, if you fail in your efforts to deter it or deflect it, you've taken a direct hit. So you're truly the donkey in the hailstorm that we spoke about. And your only defense is to plant your feet, put your head down, and stand and take it. And you don't want to be that donkey in a hailstorm. Now, to take our tank example a bit further, we saw that the true safety lies not simply in deflecting shells and trying to be small. It lies in speed, elusiveness, firepower, and ability to deliver a hit back. So therefore, sheer passivity is not an effective defense at all. The best defense is, in fact, a good offense. And the enemy's perception, hopefully correct, should always be that you have the power to badly hurt him. And that works enormously in your favor. It's diversionary, it's distracting, and any resources he must divert to defend himself from what he supposes to be your capacity to damage him is just that much less that's coming at you. And so that is the entire package, the tank thing. It's not just how much can you stand up to, it's how much time can they devote to you, how much distraction can you give them, and what is your perceived ability to hurt them. That's a very different thing. So you're floating like a butterfly but stinging like a bee. This is much more the heavyweight champion the tank example, these other things. And to carry on our third example, minefield, Achtung Minen. Generally, you'll read these in German. And there are unmarked ones are just to cause casualties, but marked ones are to keep you off of a certain place. And our talk will be mined ones. We have the always expressive in every language, skull and crossbones there. But you want to be perceived as this. Do not be the passive row of houses waiting to be burgled. Be a minefield. And the point is that you're not just helping yourself, you're helping everyone. They're walking a little more softly around you. It's just a bad idea to go in there because something bad might happen to you. This is the perception that you want to encourage in a grand round situation, that you're not one more target in a shooting gallery, that you are in fact capable and eager to fire back. So the sign saying Achtung Minen has all of my undivided Achtung from the very moment that I see it, even peripherally. Now World War II combat infantryman and now English professor Paul Fussell said it's also a test of aging, which was an interesting thing. He said, when you're walking through, this is the voice of experience, a known minefield, he said you can tell a guy's age very quickly because they have one thought in mind. He said the old guy is thinking about his eyes and the young guy is thinking about his balls. And that's it. They're not thinking about anything else in the world, nothing. Because this is exactly the way you want to be regarded in the grand round setting. This is their image of you in a good mood. You're not fooling with that, you're not trying to steal with that, and you're certainly not trying to step on that. The deterrence is not a side effect, it is the entire point. You need to deter rather than piss away your valuable ammunition, vanquishing them one by one. And you don't want to use up your finite resources killing randos one by one. Keep them away, have them perceive that you're bad news. This is done with the sheer roundsmanship, saves much trouble. It also saves you running out of ammunition and being clobbered. So once again, systematic study is being recommended, beginning with, and I can't recommend these too highly, the works of the master himself, Stephen Potter. This is them. This is the initial School of Roundsmanship from Craft to Science. Bond report. Thank you for watching. Please watch other bond reports. Thank you.